first question is, can you provide online resources that would be positive for teenagers to access? Kind of for you. So, okay, this is going to be annoying, but thecultureproject.org actually has a lot of really good resources for teenagers. As missionaries, part of what we do is write blogs that are kind of oriented around the students that we minister to or based off of questions that we've gotten in the classroom. So even though like your students might not be hearing talks like this from Culture Project or whoever in the school, there's a lot of articles online that for your older kids, teenagers, might be really helpful for them. So if you as parents like want resources on these things, I would recommend it. There's also a YouTube channel that has some good videos. In terms of there's not any specific websites that come to mind. However, if your kids are on social media, and yeah, like Instagram, whatever, I would encourage them to just like look, or you can also do it too, just look up some like really good Christian Catholic people on Instagram who, I mean, I don't like the term influencer, but we're gonna use it for the sake of this talk, who they can follow, because I think I just think it's really helpful to have encouraging things in their feed. And so if they have the opportunity to follow somebody on Instagram that is very positive, that's very truth-oriented, even if it's just one or two like Christian accounts that they follow that post something each day, that's a little like hint of truth each day that's gonna interrupt the regular feed. And you teenagers, like, I really highly recommend this to you. Find a couple people who are active in social media, who are just really good at evangelizing the faith through media, and just give them a follow and see what happens when you come across those posts on your feed when you're spending time on media. Okay. Do parents realize that when they don't share the whole truth and help their kids set boundaries and expectations, that their children might not respect them? I think this is a very heavy question. Because I think from a parent's end, a lot of parents are just trying to like ease their kids into faith. Because it's hard to say like, this is the faith, this is what you're going to follow. And so there's a little bit of give and take with it. And if you're a teenager, kid in this room, or even an adult in this room, and you felt like your parents have withheld some aspect of truth from you, have not taken fully the opportunity to help you set boundaries in your life, I just ask that you be very merciful toward them, because you are the first generation of teenagers to navigate what you're navigating today. Well, they're the first generation of parents to navigate it as well, and that is no easier. And so if you're kind of wanting your parents to be more open with you about something, or just help you like set some guidelines, just ask them. Honestly, I think almost every parent would be happy to grant that request and sit down and have more of an open conversation about pretty much anything that you ask about. And it is hard. It's hard as the kid to take initiative and do that. But really, if you feel like there's something that's lacking in the relationships in a relationship between a teenager and a parent, it's just that the parent probably doesn't realize it, but they want to. So giving your parents the benefit of the doubt in that, I would say, if there is more of a broken relationship between a teenager and a parent, then that's when you can think of another adult in your life, youth minister, teacher, whoever that might be, that you can go to with these harder questions that you know you can trust, and that they'll continue to lead you toward the truth as well. How do we bring teens to church and Jesus when parents don't believe? Or even if parents aren't practicing themselves and they do believe. I would just start with building a relationship with them. Like if you're an adult and there's a teenager in your life that you know is not getting the formation that they deserve, just build a relationship with them. Don't start with the faith yet. Don't, tell them what they need to be doing or what they're not doing. Just get to know them. Build a trust with them. Because teenagers want to learn, but they want to know that they're trusted first, and they want to know that they can trust you. And then just kind of ask them questions. Honestly, I've had some really surprising conversations with teenagers where I've asked them questions about what they think of things to try to move toward a conversation of faith. And I've been really in awe of what they say. Like, I think I don't think we give teenagers enough credit for like how hard they try to establish themselves and like what is good and what is true. And so build that relationship with them first, and then by getting to know them, just see what ways can you integrate faith in their lives that's applicable to them at the time. And then invitation to go to Mass, which honestly Mass might be a pretty difficult thing for them to start with. Maybe it's invitation to go to church and pray, go to adoration, talking to them about confession, like things that they might not have the opportunity to do. So invitation, don't make them think that they're doing something wrong, because if it's their parents that are preventing them from knowing Jesus and from being active in their faith, that's not their fault. Like, a lot of them just don't know any better. And so just be encouraging them and help them see the importance of that in their life without making them feel like they've been doing something wrong. Okay. Let's see here. I understand pornography is the hardest addiction to fight. Can you elaborate on the best way to prevent it? Yes, but I'm just gonna think for a couple seconds. So I want to talk a little bit about the first part of that pornography is the hardest addiction to fight. I'm not going to compare different addictions, but I'll say that yes, pornography is an incredibly difficult addiction because it is addicting. It is being addicted to something that so directly attacks our desire for love, and so it can be incredibly wounding, and it affects people's relationships with other people. It affects just the way that people see others. Like, of somebody who struggles with a pornography addiction, their brain is actually retrained to see other people as an object. The same part of their brain that would react to like a hammer or a tool would react to a person after a prolonged experience with pornography. And so this can obviously create this lack of relationship, but then this increased isolation and hurt in somebody. And so I just want to recognize, like, pornography addiction, I believe 1 in 3 men, 1 in 5 women struggle with the pornography addiction. It is an incredibly significant problem in our world today, and it is incredibly painful. So before going forward with how can we prevent that from happening, there's a lot of ways that you can attempt to prevent it, and especially for parents raising young ones. One is putting protective software on your internets, on devices. So Covenant Eyes is a good one. Covenant Eyes was created by Jason Ebert and his ministry. His ministry is chastity.com. I could be wrong on that. There is a fee for it. I don't think it's very much, but what you can do is apply Covenant Eyes as a blocker to any pornographic websites or any websites that could be like pornographic in nature. You can apply it on like your Wi-Fi, you can apply it on individual devices, phones, laptops, Chromebooks, whatever it is, and that has been incredibly helpful. I think that's probably the best way to prevent it, other than, especially for young ones, just being really mindful of how much they use technology and what they're doing when they're spending time on their phones or iPads, because it's really easy for them to access, and not intentionally, things that they shouldn't be seeing. The pornography industry intentionally targets young people. It targets children, which is why the age of exposure to pornography is so young. It's between 8 and 11. It's not because there's any kids that are like trying to seek this out. It's because they're encountering it when they're looking at a YouTube video or they're looking something up on the internet. Because by targeting kids, they can get kids addicted to pornography before they actually understand what it is. that is literally an intention of the pornography industry. It is incredibly sickening. They'll have browser names that are really similar to popular websites that kids would go on for like different toys and stuff like that, so that they can accidentally end up on those. Because kids don't know how to navigate this kind of thing. Out of curiosity, they might pursue it more. They might, click on whatever's next to it that looks similar so they can figure out what they're looking at. And so I think another one of the best ways to prevent pornography addiction, especially if you're parenting a child, teenager, is to explain to them what pornography is. Unfortunately, we live in a world where it's not enough to shelter. In fact, we can protect the innocence of children more if we're very specific about the challenges that they're going to encounter. And because this is better as an ongoing conversation, you can present something like pornography to them for the first time when they're 7 or 8 years old at an age appropriate level. Like pornography is is content that shows more than what a swimsuit would show, something that they can wrap their head around. And when people are shown that way, people's bodies are meant to be protected. They're not meant to be shown that way because they might be mistreated or something. I don't know. You can decide how you want to explain that to your individual child. But then in the ongoing conversation, you expand a little bit until by the time they're teenagers and a lot of their friends might be exposed to pornography, are addicted to pornography, they have an understanding of what it is and why it's not good for them. And they can even maybe help their friends who are struggling with it. So that was kind of an extensive answer, but be very honest, be very transparent with the things that might come up in your kids' lives, and just assume that they're going to be exposed to it. And when they're exposed to it, you want them to know what it is and how to navigate it. That's the best advice I have for that. Are kids younger than 6th grade able to have similar conversations, or you recommend waiting? I kind of answered this, but I'll just elaborate a little bit. I think these heavy conversations about healthy relationships, about good friendships, about, things like social media and things that they might encounter scrolling on the internet. I think that there is an age-appropriate way to start these conversations at an early age. And if that they're continued, that when kids navigate this, or when kids encounter these different challenges and they know their parents have already talked to them, the younger they are, when you start talking to them, the more likely they're going to come to you if they actually are facing one of these things. So that's why definitely, obviously little kids don't really understand what's going around them all that much anyway, but yeah, I'd say when you hit 8 years old and older, it's time to think about how you want to address these conversations with kids. But don't feel like you have to give them everything at once. Don't give them everything at once. They're too young for that, and that would be really discouraging for them. When are they going to hire you to expand the culture project in the Green Bay Diocese? It's so limited in location. I need some water. So, the Culture Project, it's not that old again, it's 10 years old. And then we had been expanding, and then the expansion kind of got put on hold during COVID because none of the missionaries could go into any of the schools. And so, now that we're back up and moving again, we are slowly expanding again, praise God. And I do hope that one day we can have a team in the Green Bay Diocese. I have had so many parents of teenagers or future teenagers tell me that they would love for their kids to hear these talks, and I agree. There's a lot of dioceses that are hoping to have us in, which is so good. The issue is that we need to recruit missionaries to fill all of those teams. And there's a lot of incredible organizations that are also recruiting missionaries to fill their own teams. And there's just a lot of really good ministries that are out there for young people to discern if they're wanting to do mission, which is awesome. But because Culture Project is a smaller organization, some of them just like don't hear about us, so they might not have as much interaction with us. So if you know anybody who's like in their 20s basically, who is coming out of college, who wants to take a gap year, who got into the workforce and hates it, tell them that there's an opportunity for them as a missionary. I would be happy to talk to anybody about them. It's a Catholic organization. It's incredible. I love it. I have only good things to say about it. So if they're looking for an opportunity, I have one for them. With that said, I mentioned before that we have like our website that has a whole bunch of resources on it, or our YouTube channel has a bunch of good formational videos. Like at most they're 10 minutes. Most of them are closer to 5 minutes. They're very short. And then if you're on Instagram, Facebook, we're not quite as active on Facebook, but on Facebook too, there are a whole bunch of things out there. So no, we can't have missionaries go and talk to the students in the Green Bay Diocese, unfortunately, but there are a lot of ways in which our ministry can be a resource to families, and those are just some things that I would encourage you to look into. Oh, I forgot about something I was going to say. I'm pretty sure it's on the resource card. So there's a website called Fight the New Drug, and it's a secular website that's fighting against pornography, and it's bringing awareness to pornography addiction. They are incredible. If you like Terry Crews, he's very anti-pornography. He does a lot of things on Fight the New Drug. So one thing that they have that I think is directly linked on the resource card is how to have conversations. And when you click on that link, it'll be like, okay, who are you having the conversation with? And you can click my teenager. What do you want to accomplish in this conversation? I want to talk to my teenager about pornography or whatever it is. So if you're like, I have to have a hard conversation and I don't know where to go with it, that's a good thing. And also if you're a teenager and you have to have a hard conversation, you can use it too. So I just wanted to point out that resource. Okay, let's see. How did I answer the question or statement, if I confess to my parents, they would be disgusted with me? I think that when a teenager is struggling with something, they've made a mistake, or they're struggling with some kind of sin, and they don't know how to talk about it, that can be repressed very, very deeply in their heart, and it can lead to a lot of shame. And they'll make assumptions about how people who love them very, very much are going to respond to that. And unfortunately, I can't say for certain that that student had parents that wouldn't be disappointed in them had they been honest. However, I encourage them to bring it up anyway. I encourage them to just recognize that when we struggle with things, when we have these evils that attack our hearts, and they come so internally into us, that we just tend to believe a lot of lies about ourselves. And so I had encouraged them to talk to their parents anyway, and to just pray for that conversation, and to be honest with how they felt in the situation as well. And even though they would kind of take a chance in that, I kind of gave them a backup plan, and if they're not received well in that, if there's another adult in their life that they trust. And because we speak to at schools or at parishes, I always kind of refer to the teacher or the youth minister, because that's a primary formator of the kids too. If they feel more comfortable talking to them or asking them how they can talk to their parents, I encourage them to do that as well. That's not an easy conversation for anybody to have, let alone a 14 or 15-year-old. So I thought that honestly that was a very courageous thing for them to ask about. Okay, this question is it's referring to the morality or the sinfulness, we'll say, of being in the LGBTQ community. And I am really glad that somebody asked this question. So obviously there's a lot of association with Christians, Catholics, or a lot of assumptions that we hate, that like we're prejudiced against people who identify as gay or lesbian or trans or any part of the LGBTQ community. And if there's anybody who knows somebody that identifies in that community, if there's anybody here that does identify as that community, I just want you to know that you have a home in the body of Christ. That you are not the exception to his love, no matter what. The morality of it, to clarify, to identify as somebody with same-sex attraction, to identify or to feel like you're a transgender is not a sin. That is a very real thing that people experience. And honestly, it's a very difficult thing that people experience. It becomes morally wrong when somebody enters into that identity intentionally. So maybe they, like outwardly identify themselves as a gender that they're not, or they enter into a same-sex relationship. And these struggles are just particularly sensitive because every one of us has a desire for love. And for many of us, that desire is to fall in love with somebody, right? To experience that relationship of romance, of marriage. And people who experience same-sex attraction, that desire is not different. And so in a way, there is a cross that comes with that. There is a cross that comes with desiring love and not being in order to like remain true to the Christian faith. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Not pursue that desire of love in the same way that the people around them are. That's a very heavy thing to experience. And so if you know anybody in your life that is part of the LGBTQ community, yes, there's a lot of different, and maybe they're in a same-sex relationship, maybe they identify as a gender that they're not, they're probably already being condemned, especially by Christians. Be a Christian in their life that will first and foremost love them. And remember, love, it doesn't just mean accepting them, doesn't just mean being indifferent toward them, but loving them means trying to bring them closer to God. Their sexuality is not the core of their identity. Their identity is a beloved child of God. Help them recognize that more than anything, because it's only in that they'll have the freedom to recognize that every desire for love that they have will first and foremost be fulfilled by God. But they can't know that unless they recognize that they have a home in Christ's heart. The last, I got a question that said what's kind of like the statistics for suicide among teenagers. I don't know the answer to that, honestly. You could probably look up on a couple different sources online and see generally what it is, but I'm not quite sure what that is. And then the last couple questions are advice for dating. Dating teenagers. Let's get to it. So one of them was like, when is it appropriate for teenagers to start dating? I don't think that there's a certain age. However, dating, the intention of dating is to discern marriage with somebody. And so it shouldn't be taken lightly. It's not to say that teenagers in high school who are dating should be deciding whether or not they're gonna marry each other. But they should be pursuing a relationship that's teaching them how to have good boundaries, that's teaching them how to express this sacrificial love to another person, to prepare their hearts at their age level for what a relationship will call of them when they're called to marriage. I honestly encourage students when I speak to them not to feel like they even need to be open to dating until college, because I don't think it's bad. I would say for middle schoolers, don't date in middle school. don't date middle school. I think, when you get to high school, that's definitely a conversation that you can have. Teenagers are going to be at different levels of maturity and their ability to pursue a healthy relationship and to understand what a healthy relationship takes. But it's not really until college anyway that teenagers are ready mentally to be married to somebody. And so I just try to take the pressure off of the whole dating experience in high school. It's so much better for them to learn how to have good relationships and good boundaries with their friends and their life, because friendship is crucial to a high school experience, in my opinion. However, boundaries in dating relationships. If you have to teach a child like what are good boundaries, or if at one point you yourself are in a relationship with someone, I don't really think that these boundaries change. I kind of break it down into emotional and physical chastity. So you're gonna hear a little blurb of my sexual integrity talk right now. Emotional chastity is a little bit more nuanced. This is gonna look different from 15-year-olds who are dating each other to like 20-year-olds who are dating each other. But basically, these boundaries protect our heart and our soul. No, they protect our body and our soul. Sorry. It's been a while since I've given the sexual integrity talk. Emotional chastity is meant to protect our soul. And so it just means like you have the permission and the right to guard your own heart. It means that there is a pace to which you offer yourself to another person. There's a pace to which you reveal the different parts of your heart to someone. You are not going to share your entire testimony and everything that you've struggled with in your first 1 or 2 dates. Because even though the person in front of you might be great and might be really kind, they don't really deserve that much of your heart yet. Whereas when somebody's engaged, it's pretty important that these two people really know each other almost as much as they possibly can. Because they are now deciding that they're gonna spend the rest of their life. And so there just has to be a pace in that relationship. There has to be certain steps, like some examples of things that are not emotional chastity are when a woman, I was guilty of this in high school, I'm just gonna say that, a woman like puts together her entire wedding Pinterest board if she like has a crush on somebody, or like writes his last name right after her first name, right? And like, I wonder what that would be like. Or I think I've heard it's a common thing for guys, like the whole love at first sight, like you look at someone, you're like, oh, someone I'm gonna marry, and you've never said a word to her before. And it's like, it's really beautiful to encounter someone and like have hope for something to happen, and to think like, oh wow, like, I just wonder what like a love for that person might be like. But it's important that we take those desires of our heart and we offer them to God. It's like, okay, Lord, like, you know that this desire, like, you know that this is a person that I desire, a relationship I desire, but this is now in your control. You will fulfill this desire, but I'm surrendering to you what that will look like. That's kind of a very general view on emotional chastity. Physical chastity is where it gets really fun. Physical chastity, I think when we hear the word chastity, we think of like just saving sex for marriage, and that's a part of it. That's kind of how I understood chastity until I became a culture project missionary and learned that there's more to it. But really, physical chastity is just recognizing like that you yourself, well, chastity as a whole, is like you yourself as a gift. You are a body and soul intertwined that is created to be a gift. And because you are going to give yourself as a gift, you deserve to be able to protect that gift that you are, right? Like, it might sound cheesy, but it's not, it's true. We're created as a gift, and that's a beautiful thing. And so, in physical chastity, we practice it because we don't want that gift to be taken from us. We don't want to be taken advantage of. And it also protects the beauty and the integrity of sex, because sex is such a good and beautiful thing. It is meant to be a part of the human experience. However, it's intended for two very strong purposes that can only be fulfilled in the context of marriage. These purposes are for procreation and to bond with another person. There's other reasons that people have sex, but those reasons do not fulfill the purpose in which it was created. And so that's why we protect it, and I could go on for it for a while, but we're already over time, so I'm just gonna give the practical boundaries. Okay. The best boundaries, we give these to the students that we speak to. So if any of you students in here are like cringing when you hear it, you're not the first ones. Drawing the line between affection and arousal. So affection is like, I can show affection to my parents right here. Like I can give them a hug, or a healthy sign of affection in relationship is like a kiss or holding hands. Like, it's very pure, it's very well intended. Whereas anything that leads to arousal, we just encourage that that's entirely set aside until marriage, because arousal is also a good and beautiful thing. It's part of our biology as human beings, but it also has a purpose, and the purpose is to prepare the body for sex. And if we are trying to protect sex and save sex until marriage, then we shouldn't be doing anything that will prepare our body for it. And so the kind of fine line is between kissing and making out. That's the concrete boundary that I have given to students, to a lot of friends who are in dating relationships, and they have told me that this has been a really good boundary for them. But yeah, anything making out and after is really just, it's going to become very difficult to put a stop to it once it starts. So I heard these boundaries when I was like 17 or 18 from a talk that Jackie Francois was doing. She's a Catholic woman who talks a lot about love and relationship. And she was so specific in these boundaries that I was like, I could not forget them if I tried. So don't feel like you have to sugarcoat them to your kids, because it was really helpful for me when I think I was just a senior or a freshman in college when I heard those, and I was like, okay, sounds good, like crystal clear, we're good to go. So, and then also, especially in high school, if two teenagers are dating, if they are dating in the dark, it means that there's something to hide. So just look for relationships that are in the light. Relationships, them practicing relationships that invites other people into them. Like they should not be ashamed to have their significant other around their parents or around their other friends. And this for you teenagers too, like if you feel like there's something that you need to hide in your relationship, then I would just highly suggest that you reflect on the relationship that you're in and just think about what you're hiding and why. I wish we could go more into chastity, because it's just a big, beautiful virtue that's so good. But I will say that for somebody wanting to be in a relationship, if you are trying to pursue chastity in your life, do not just settle for somebody who is willing to agree with the boundaries that you have. Be in a relationship with someone who will practice chastity alongside you, and who will strengthen you when you feel weak, and you can strengthen him or her when they feel weak, and just empower each other to make sacrifices for one another in that. Because endless times, tale as old as time, there's somebody who wants to wait for marriage to have sex, and the other person in the relationship will agree to it, and then it becomes too hard, and they'll pressure the other person into having it, and that person who originally wanted to wait will feel a deep regret, or if they're out of the relationship, they'll feel taken advantage of. So find somebody who is willing to protect that desire in you, and honestly, in high school, you might not find it. So that's another reason to just give yourself some time to be surrounded by more people who are ready for a mature and beautiful relationship.